talking about it with Indian
Well,
motivation.
I think
I'll
it's
finish.
7 o'clock, according to what my little computer says here. So we'll call this meeting to order with 6 members present and the 7th to be joining us shortly. Let's see. We'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Second. Who was the second down there?
Me?
Susan. Motion and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? No. So motion carries 6-0. Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda? Is that what you're wanting?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make
I
that
was
motion.
chuckling to myself about the addendum for at-risk milk.
Yeah.
It's refrigerator appropriate, it's just a pricing issue.
Sorry.
It's not, the milk is not at risk, it's not gonna be stolen.
That's what was stumping me, was the at-risk milk.
The at-risk milk is actually snack milk for preschool. We've
Okay.
increased the time for
It just-
preschool. Yeah,
Because it just made me chuckle.
I know, it does.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, and we will, let's see. We do have an opportunity here to accept comments from the public, and I do have one card here. So, Mr. Woogie, you have 5 minutes in which to address us this evening. Again, we will listen, but if there's a response required, we will provide that to you in writing after the fact.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank the superintendent, or new superintendent, for speaking where everyone can hear. When she comes up here, it really is nice. I only heard about half of what was said up there so far because it really projects an image of caring and respect when we all can hear well out there. The reason for this address is to bring to light a change that they're considering in Missouri. I read in the Kansas City paper, and it's the starting time of school at 9 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock. I asked the kids at the Sunday school class how many of them would like starting school at 9 o'clock, and it was almost unanimous. And the rest of them, I think, hadn't had time to think about it. And starting later would make it safer for the kids, as it is dark at 7 o'clock. Many of them are picked up at 7 o'clock, and particularly during the winter months. And we need to consider their safety. Starting time would allow the teachers to compile a lesson plan from 8 to 8:30. I was involved with the school systems, and many times the lesson plans didn't exist. And I taught classes in the military, and of course we had to present a lesson plan, and everything had a certain schedule. And it'd also give time for teachers to interact from 8:30 to 9, where instead of the teachers talking at the kids, they talk with the kids. And it'd also be a problem-solving time when they have a question to ask, because they're study rather than having a test and miss it. And if you miss it on a test, then you tend to remember it that way. Tests should be 100% the way. But anyway, the most important reason is that many of the children are deprived of rest. I've seen children that the teacher was on all the time trying to make them pay attention, and come to find out, I got back with the teacher, and she says, well, that child is awakened at 5 o'clock and was sent from the babysitters and just shuffled around. But that's an entirely different person. But I found that if I don't get enough sleep, I'm sleepy all day, and I function entirely different. I mean, totally different. I'm a little more sensitive, and then that night I don't sleep well. It just seems like you kind of get on a different level there. And but anyway, that's just creates a vicious circle for the kids. So it's just something to think about. They're considering it in Missouri, and I do appreciate your courtesy and time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Woogie. Okay, excuse me. Next up, we have item number 4, reports and presentations. Mr. Ray.
Thank you very much. I'll be reporting on an early childhood, our early childhood programming, and just wanted to put out there that we are making some changes. As we mentioned in a couple of earlier meetings, I've made a couple of adjustments to our early childhood programming already, and I just wanted to give a little bit of rationale to that, and also to let you know what we're doing in terms of a grant that we've just written for approving social skills, or for obtaining a social skills curriculum that we've used in other districts to great success. So first and foremost is that early childhood grant. We did put that through the second step application. Sorry, that other one. We did put forth a grant. The grant was due on Friday, and that is on the prior agenda, or earlier in the agenda. That grant is it's a pretty small grant. It's just for a couple $1,000s, but that grant will provide us with some much needed social skills curriculum across the district. We are looking to have a consistent curriculum, and in addition to that consistent academic curriculum, which will be implemented as soon as we can. We're vetting some products right now to look at what's the most effective in terms of progress monitoring for our early childhood program, and also the social skills curriculum that we have an opportunity to get funded by this grant will be implemented as well. Second step is a program that starts in early childhood, starts in a preschool. It goes all the way up through the elementary years, and is a great program. Up in the later elementary years, it focuses more on bully prevention and those kinds of things, but it's really just a way for us to get social skills across to our preschool population a lot more effectively. What I've found in talking with the principals in the district is that kindergarten is a very challenging time for some of our students if they have not had preschool education, and so the social skills curriculum is designed to address that. So I wanted to give a little rationale for why I wrote that grant. The second thing is and I won't go into too much detail because I think you guys all have a copy of that document. But I do want to talk about early childhood programming with that PowerPoint that we have, because I want to address really why early childhood education is so important. One of the things that I guess is a challenge is to communicate to folks when something is not mandatory for a district, why it's important nonetheless. Kindergarten, for example, is not mandatory in the state of Kansas. Obviously, we've all offered kindergarten for a number of years. We do have preschool programming in the district, and we have had for a number of years. For kids with disabilities, it is mandatory. It is a federal mandate that we provide special education programming for students as soon as they're born if we recognize a disability. That takes a different form from birth through age 2, but then when children turn age 3, they're automatically eligible for for preschool programming in the district, in the state. So I wanted just to highlight why that is so important for us, because in the past and what we've done, not casting aspersions on what we have already done as a district, what I know is that there are some things that I recognize as needing a little bit more equity, and so I'm trying to address those through through the changes that we're proposing. By the numbers, Ottawa's population includes over 1,000 children ages 5 and under, according to recent statistics, or the recent census, the most recent census. Now, when they consider 5 and under, that does incorporate our kindergarten population, of which we have 191 at the beginning of this school year. So That accounts for about 20% of those kids. 58 preschoolers we serve currently at Eugene Field and PALS. We have a preschool program at Eugene Field, which is funded by the state pre-kindergarten grant program, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. And then we have our PALS program, which has typically been for kids with disabilities only. We have attempted at times in the past, it's been my understanding, to obtain or to offer preschool to typical peers so that we would provide them with some peer models with limited success. That was one of the first things that when I, in my previous life, I was in charge of 1,800 little ones in Cherry Creek School District. And that's a pretty large preschool program for a district of 51,000 kids. But those 1,800 kids, the preschool classrooms that we provided for them there were all blended, which means that they did have typical peers in those classrooms. And we had a ratio of about 33% kids with disabilities to 67% kids without. In this district, and in most of the state of Kansas, we're a little behind the curve in terms of that least restrictive environment, which is what is mandated by the IDEA, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But just in terms of getting back to the numbers, 58 preschoolers served. We have 15 also at our high school CTEC program, which is basically, it's an early childhood program that they offer in the morning. I believe parents are charged $2 a week for that program, and it gives the students who are looking at early childhood education as a career the opportunity to work with little ones in that environment, which is a great opportunity. It's a great program. Again, it hasn't been integrated with our other early childhood programs, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. There's probably about 100 students that are served at area private preschools by my calculations, and that's a very rough estimate. I don't think that it could possibly exceed that. But there are a few options out there. That leaves about 250 kids that would be preschool aged, ages 3 and 4, that are currently unserved. Again, in talking to kindergarten, those who supervise kindergarten programs, one of the things about kindergarten readiness is that some of our kids just aren't ready. They don't know how to do school. That's a little bit of a problem. Our obligation as a school district, however, we do have that IDEA mandate, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which states that all students 3 years old and older must be served with their typical peers in the least restrictive environment. There have been recent court cases that have been in our 10th Circuit that have been found to be in the favor of the parents who took their kids to private preschools because they wanted to have typical peer models for their kids. All that was offered was a PALS-like program for their student, and they refused that offering, took their kids to a private preschool, and not only were we obligated to bring services to them in that particular court case, but we were obligated to pay for that child's tuition to that preschool because we were not able to offer them a least restrictive environment. Trying to offset that with our PALS program by integrating it more this year, and we are successfully doing so. Currently we have 11 students in the morning. 7 of those students have disabilities, 4 of whom do not. In the afternoon, we're fully 50% students with disabilities and students without. So we've made great strides already in trying to blend those programs, but we're going to continue to make efforts to do so. Again, the comments from principals on kindergarten readiness is that those students, some of them are not ready. And the state recognizes that by developing that state pre-kindergarten program, which prior to this year was known as the At-Risk 4-Year-Olds program. We have served 36 students in that program over the course of the last few years. And those students were all students without disabilities, but did have other risk factors that made them eligible for those programs at no cost to the parents. As you know, Ottawa has a fairly high population of students who are considered economically disadvantaged by our recent statistics and by the state's report card. It's as much as 66% in some of our buildings. Knowing that, we know that the private preschool option is probably not an option for many of our parents, and yet they don't recognize that there are any other options out there, and to this point, those options have been limited. We'd like to expand that. So moving on, moving forward, the accountability that is really the reason that we're doing this, because we really do have an obligation to the Common Core. That is something that Kansas has adopted, and that's something that we do have to recognize. Don't know if you can get that to click on that hyperlink or open that hyperlink that the Common Core says, but just to give you an indication, These are the kindergarten standards for just reading, for in the English language art standards. And if you scroll down there, they're pretty extensive. When you talk about it being a standards-based model, this is where it starts in kindergarten. So you can imagine that without the early readiness learning foundation, those building blocks for actually knowing how to do school and knowing how to move forward to the expectations that are there for our kids when they haven't been exposed to even a preschool program are pretty immense, and they're very daunting for those kids. Back to that PowerPoint, I do believe that the K-12 Common Core standards are going to expand to P-12 standards. They have across the state or across the nation in many states. They've incorporated preschool standards as well. Even though preschool is not mandatory, they recognize how important it is. It's not your mother's preschool anymore. It used to be when preschool, we'd have nap time, we'd have play time, and we'd have snacks, and we'd go home. We do have a focused academic curriculum for the students that are in preschool, and that's going to be even more apparent as the years go by when we are looking at those building blocks being the foundation for a lot of our academic achievement scores as we continue to see those rise in the upper grades. It's absolutely not daycare. That's a misconception. I know that Eugene Field takes a great deal of pride in saying that their program is a pre-kindergarten program. There's really not much difference between our preschool program and a pre-kindergarten program other than the fact that we don't restrict the age to just those who are going to be entering kindergarten the next year. The academic expectations are there for both. So that adoption of common curricula, the focus on both academic and social skills is going to be there. We've also, part of that grant was written to incorporate the Safe to Tell program for preschoolers, because as most of you would recognize, many of our students with disabilities are at risk of being taken advantage of. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and we do everything that we can do to prevent that from happening. So by 2015, all the preschool classrooms that we have in this district, I'd like to see preschool classrooms in every elementary school. Certainly the principals would like that as well. The buildings themselves, space is an issue. So the more that we can keep the focus on the kids and recognize that that's there, the more we can have that as a priority moving forward. That focus on P-12 standards is going to be there nationwide, and here, of course, in Ottawa, we're going to follow that. We'd like to provide preschool opportunities for at least 150 preschool-aged kids. That would almost triple what we are doing right now. That certainly is doable fiscally, and also we certainly have the resource base of kids to grow. I'd like to make sure that we have a consistent instructional, organizational, and curricular focus for all students, regardless of their socioeconomic ability or their socioeconomic status. They all need the same opportunities for development of those skills. And as has been the case in a lot of our districts, we would offer a tuition structure when it's appropriate. If parents have the ability to pay, we would expect that. If they don't meet certain socioeconomic cutoffs, that's down the road a little bit. But I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that we are focusing on that early childhood education program, and I would welcome any questions that you might have.
One question I would have is, has there been any outreach between the district and the existing private preschools about Common Core and the pre-K standards, so that they know what could be useful to these kids as they move into kindergarten?
It's a great question. I have not had any such interactions. I know that the district is collaborating with some of the private schools in the area in terms of title identification of kids, but that's in the school age population. At the preschool, we're not quite there yet. That is one of the next steps, though, is to make certain that we are aligning what we're doing with what they're doing.
Awesome.
You mentioned that a lot of parents are unaware of the opportunities out there for the preschool age kids. What form of communication are we trying to reach some of those parents? I was just thinking the doctors here in town, as they see kids developing, might recognize something and say, well, have you ever thought of, and then at that point perhaps them be a first message out to those parents.
Absolutely. We have to be careful at this point. I have to be careful at this point because I don't want to make sure that we open a can of worms that we can't serve. We are currently looking for more space options for our preschool kids. So we don't want to get the word out too quickly. The pediatricians in this area do a nice job of identifying those kids that they feel are at risk for developmental delays, and they do refer students to us quite frequently. At least once a month we have a screening process where we identify or evaluate those kids, either screen or evaluate those students to make sure that they either do or do not qualify. When they don't qualify, we suggest that because they are a little delayed but not quite enough to meet the criteria for special education, that the parents consider them for the at-risk program. Currently, that program does not have a wait list. We have, in the past, we've always had a wait list for that program. We've been able to take kids off the wait list by offering more slots over here at our PALS program for those students. We intend, once we have the space available, to do a much more aggressive campaign of information to the parents and to the pediatricians in the area.
I probably shouldn't have been, but I was surprised at the low percentage of kids that actually get preschool education. How do we compare statewide, nationwide with those percentages? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I do. Statewide, unfortunately, we're right about at the average. Nationwide, we're behind. I don't know. Well, I do know. It does correlate with socioeconomic, the ability of parents to actually, a lot of parents don't even consider preschool because they know they can't afford it. They don't recognize that some of the options do exist out there. Eugene Field knows, the parents there know, that there are options out there, and the majority of the Eugene Field position, or the openings that they have at Eugene Field, are filled by Eugene Field kids. Unfortunately, the grant that was written 4 years ago, 6 years ago. I think we've been implementing it for that long. That grant had limited but potentially growing slots. Unfortunately, we all know what's happened over the last few years, and those slots have dried up and they have not expanded them at all. So the state has informed us that as soon as, and we've petitioned for them, as soon as additional slots are available, they will allow us to apply for those slots. But we don't anticipate that any are going to be forthcoming for the next few years. So without the knowledge of those preschool positions being open, and we are limited to 36, as you can see, we've got a lot of little ones who would be eligible for preschool, over 300. 36 slots isn't going to do it. And the kids that qualify for special education, they are entitled, but in addition to those 36, but that comprises the 50-some kids that we have currently. There just isn't enough.
It's funding.
It is funding, but it's so critical. And in fact, the studies nationwide that have shown those students who have had preschool and have had an involved early childhood experience, both parentally and from the school system, do immensely better on achievement tests because they're prepared. And there is a little bit of a chicken and the egg kind of thing going on there.
Right.
But it certainly, you can't argue with the fact that the early childhood intervention does reap benefits and save the district and the state and the taxpayers tons of money down the line.
Long term, it sure does.
It's a huge return on investment.
It really is.
For a societal investment.
Plus, they are so cute. I go in there after. I am so blessed to have the early childhood classroom in our office here, because I was out there with them today, melting in the sun. But it was it's so fun, because it's fun just to see the questions that they ask and the energy that they put forth, and they are growing by leaps and bounds in that program.
Very cool.
Anyway.
Any additional questions for Mr. Ray? I keep wanting to make
Thank
you
you.
a doctor.
Wait, he can move over on the subject.
Yeah. Hearing none. Thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely.
Great
Thank you.
job.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, the next item on the list is a facilities timeline in reference to board goal number 2, which is communicating the needs and wants to the community.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As we talked last board meeting about what kinds of things that we needed in terms of facilities, the board asked us to put together a facilities timeline. So Dr. Kraus and I worked on a draft I sent to you on Friday, and then it is in front of you now. I would ask you to take a look at that, and I will kind of hit the highlights in terms of what the expectations are, and I would invite you to help me change whatever things that you think need to be changed. For the month of September and October, we want our principals to talk with our site councils and brainstorm and their staffs and really find out what do we need in terms of facilities. We have some broad ideas. We know we need space. We know we need preschool space. We know we need restroom facilities at Eugene Field. But really let everybody have a chance to put their ideas on the table in terms of what we really need. So we want to do that in September and October. In November, we want to identify our larger community group. And that community group should be about 15 to 20 people. And we'll have parents, and we'll have senior citizens, and we'll have business leaders, and we'll have some board members. Just a variety of citizens of Ottawa will be on that committee. And then in December is kind of a short month and people are busy, so we would only meet probably once, and we would identify the leaders of that group. We would need a chairperson and a co-chairperson to start really honing in on the work that we need to do. And then in January, we would work on reviewing the research about the kinds of spaces that students need to be college and career ready. And we would review the survey that was done last March and make plans for future groups. Then, as you can see, in February, we would have some subcommittee work. Dr. Krause did a great deal of research on bond issues and so on for his dissertation. And I've had the opportunity to go through this process twice. So we think that we've checked off everything on the list, but certainly if you see something we have not, let me know. So part of those the groups will be an advertising committee, subcommittee actually. We'll have a fundraising committee. You cannot use tax dollars to float a bond. And we'll have a media committee. That will be the committee that's a little different than advertising, in that committee will focus on phones and small group work and those kinds of things. We'll have a speakers bureau that will go to community groups, civic groups, clubs, and so on, and do a presentation about what the committee at large has determined that we need to do. And then you can see through the summer, the subcommittees will work in the spring, and then in the summer they will continue their work. What we know is typically that the work is pretty light and people aren't really listening or paying a lot of attention, particularly in June and July. And then we would come back in August and work full force, probably have 2 or 3 meetings that month, and really work on the Speakers Bureau and fundraising, the media and advertising, both in September and October. What we know is that in terms of information, sharing information, and this is not just our getting information out, it is our listening and understanding what the community is saying to us. So what we know is that we don't want to peak too early. We don't want everybody to be excited and have ideas and so on back in May or June. We want that peak to be the end of October. And so then, as we had talked about before, we could go to election on November 4th, which I think, Bill, you had talked about would be a great time to go to election. So with that, what questions do you have about the timeline?
How does that fit with, I know we have to publish certain things in the paper, like what's going to be on the election or what's going to be, I mean, there's certain timelines that way, more nuts and bolts kind of thing. Does that fit with this timeline?
Yes, I believe that's a 60 or a 90-day requirement.
Because you'd have that by July with your subcommittees going for full force speed.
I could,
so.
exactly. Good point.
So do you see these committees, or this committee coming to the public then with a full-blown plan, or just X number of dollars that we need, or what do you see them coming to the public with?
A full-blown plan, based on what the groups earlier in the year have talked about, the parents, the staffs, the site councils, and so on. From that list, we'll gather the information. When we get together in the larger group, we'll gather information from that larger group, brainstorming session, if you will, and then determine what kinds of things do we need. And then we'll have someone come in and work with us in terms of cost.
Do you see like architect drawings and things like that? I mean, you'd have to be if you were going to
Right,
ask for one.
absolutely. And that's going to be the work of that large group. Once we get to that large group, they're going to determine the more intricate details about when they want to see drawings, when they want to see costs, and those kinds of things.
The difference being is that the community group, the large group is the one driving the focus of what has been determined that the community thinks we need, and how does that look, instead of us sitting here at board meeting going, well, this is what we think we need, and now how do we get the community to buy in? The community's telling us
Right.
what they think we need.
And frankly, some of the groundwork for the architectural drawings have been done. I mean,
Yeah, a lot of it has been.
we've looked at a lot of different options, or you guys have looked at a lot of different options. And so,
And I would certainly share that with the large committee. There's extensive plans in my office, and so I'm sure that much of that information is very valuable. That, along with the survey and a number of other things, would be, I think, very valuable to that large community group.
good place
You
to
know,
start.
one thing I would like to see, because it is part of the process, and a bond issue would be, what would be the likely result, but at some point in the process, probably in the May-June timeframe, is a decision as to whether what the community says they think we need is something that's
Okay.
requiring of a bond issue.
So fairly early.
Fairly early in the process, yeah.
You know, if you look back at January, and we talk about consensus on what we need, after we review the research and the survey and so on, in my view, that would be the time to work with architects and work with the groups that have that understanding and that knowledge, to determine.
I guess my concern in that is that I have a feeling we're gonna have a wider array of needs possible than what we originally think. And it may take us more than 30 days to build that consensus.
Okay?
That's my concern.
And we could certainly do that. When we look at this timeline, we can stretch it here and there a little bit if we need to.
And when you look at the timing, and Bill, you put out a good date, looking at the November 14 election, we'll still also have an April 15 election. That if this is more evolved, as David, you said, if the laundry list comes out longer than what has ever been perceived, because there could be a consensus to do more than what we hear in the survey and other items as it floats to the top, and if we get buy-in, we need to do it right when we put it out for the vote. We still have a secondary date with
True.
this, so we don't waste our dollars or waste the process, because you've got a backup date that can do an election without any additional dollars spent. So this is a good time to walk through the process,
Yeah.
because there's not a special election then,
Yeah.
if you do have a bump in the road. Because, as again, you've still got some steps in here of interviewing architects and going back through the process of who do we want to be our partners in this. But again, I think we need to set an aggressive time frame, because if we don't, we could procrastinate for a very long time. So I really like the strategy.
We're
Thank
already
you.
feeling pressures space-wise, so we don't want
Yes.
to delay it forever. We've been sitting still for quite a while.
And I think historically, the school bond issues do better at
November.
bigger elections. So the bigger turnout we can get, the better we're gonna do.
Okay. Other questions? Very good. Okay, I'll make changes and email this out to you on Friday. Thank you.
Looks good, thank you.
Okay, item 4.03 would be board reports. And I do have one, but if there's anyone else that has one, I'll let them go before me.
You should have gotten an email from Jeannie today on the tour for the ORC.
ORC.
They're having it sooner than they thought they would. I was hoping it'd be cooler weather, but that will be Wednesday, so I know that'll be on her request to get a head count back. But
Yeah.
Yeah. NFI won't be there.
And also Wall of Honor is Thursday night, so.
I know that I took part in the high school site council meeting today, and one of the things that they did was walk through the building and get a tour, you know, with kids in play and seeing what was going on in the building. You know, discussions around primarily the 200 hallway or the 200 block of classrooms that are triangular in shape, and getting to see how less than ideal that can be. And then they showed Dr. Cobb showed the site council the science classrooms in operation. So you got to see the backpacks in the hallways, and you got to see the really being crammed in for biology classes and for physical science classes and some of those kinds of things. So it was a really good opportunity for the site council to see what was going on there. The other thing he talked about briefly was looking at the ACT as a testing model and kind of getting some feedback from the site council on that. And I gather that it was a fairly popular idea to look at that direction, so.
one thought, and I don't know if this is legal or not, so again, I'll preface that if you can tell me if it's legal or not. Could we have our audio-visual class do filming? Because there are some people, when we're looking at communication, that might not be able to see those room or come out when it's in action.
I think it'd be
That we
awesome
could
to do
it
that,
on
yeah.
our internet page to maybe stream some videos on showing the, I mean, our students know what's they need. That would be one good way to let the students and possibly the student council do some filming to be able to communicate those spatial needs that,
That's a good
unless
idea.
you're there and you see the science room or the.
Well, yeah, and it's difficult for a whole bunch of people to get in and see that, but if there was a
During-
way we could film that and then put it up on the web, on the school website or something so that people could see, you know, some of the issues that we face.
Maybe you can get them out and maybe in some of the elementary schools, you know, here, the kids are reading in a stairwell, this is their reading area.
Yes.
But we have to
A lot of
protect the
people aren't aware of
privacy
that.
interests of our students and our teachers, so we'll have to
Get
protect
lots
the
of
privacy
waivers.
interests, but we'll
Yeah.
get lots of waivers, but it'd
Yeah.
be a good way to be able to show people what the issue is.
We have an opt-out as part of our enrollment, so we could do that for the most part. We check and make sure that we didn't have any kids that were in the film part that we couldn't have. So yes, we can do that.
Okay. Any other board reports?
No.
Okay, cool.
Sorry.
Just, I thought you were getting ready to give us one.
No.
All right, then it looks like the next item, we don't have any policies or contracts or anything to deal with this week,
We were all on consent.
and they were all on consent agenda, so let's skip on down to item number 6, executive session for negotiations. Brian, how long do you think we need for that? 10 minutes? Okay.
I would think.
Want to go ahead and,
Okay. Mr. President, I move the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representative or representatives of the body. The board return to the open meeting at 7:55 o'clock in this room. The executive session is required to protect the district's right to the confidentiality of its negotiating position and the public interest.
Second.
we have a motion, a second to go in executive session. I'm assuming you wanted to include Dr. Kraus and Dr.
I will
Stroh.
include Dr. Kraus and Dr. Stroh.
All righty. All those in favor of going to executive session, signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Oh, there's my son.
Are we doing executive?
Mr. President, I move we return to open session.
Doctor?
We have a motion. We now have a second from Susan.
Personnel.
Move in second to come back into open session. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. We are back, and I take it we're not doing an executive session on personnel?
Correct.
Okay. Then we are ready for item 8.01 to approve the personnel list.
I'd make a motion to approve the personnel, revision number 3 of the personnel list.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve revision number 3 of the personnel list.
It's
Is there-
highlighted.
For such a short list, that's a lot of revisions.
There's a lot of revision for the short list, you bet.
Looks like one last minute ad. Is that right?
I know, I wondered about that too.
Okay.
What's going on in maintenance?
All those in favor of approving the personnel list signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, announcements.
I do have a couple of announcements. First, I'd like to introduce Jan Strecker Hedges. Jan, would you stand up? Jan is my mentor with the Kansas State University Superintendent's Mentor Program. And so I want to welcome her and her husband, Dick. They live in Fort Scott, and I've been following Jan around my whole life, I feel like. Thank you, Jan. I took Jan's job in Hutchinson when I moved there from Wamego. And while I was sitting listening to her, I had asked her some questions, and we were talking about the job. I thought, man, she is such a cool person. I wish I could work with her. And so I had the job for a year, and then she came back as our interim superintendent. So I got to work with her that year. And so I'm fortunate to have her as my coach and my mentor. So I want to welcome her. Another announcement, yesterday we went to Topeka, a number of us from Lincoln Elementary and Shannon Fanning, to celebrate Kara Corley's Teacher of the Year. She is our district teacher of the year. It was a great ceremony, and enjoyed meeting her parents and her family and so on. It was a fun day. And then on Friday last week, Ottawa Middle School and Ottawa High School both did presentations at the Kansas MTSS conference. And that was awesome. They had about 40 participants each. And I don't know how much you know about the difficulty across Kansas with middle schools and high schools implementing MTSS. Elementary schools had jumped right in and implemented MTSS. Challenge, yes, but without a great deal of difficulty. But I think to have a middle school and a high school that's as advanced as ours is something to be very proud of. And then finally, the Supreme Court of Kansas will hear the Gannon versus State of Kansas case on October 8th, and it's going to be streamed live on the internet. So when I get that link, I will email it out to you. And so Dale Dennis told us on Thursday that he expects that the Supreme Court judges will make a decision around Christmas time, so that the next legislative session they can address whatever the court decides. So
He's got confidence that they'll do it.
he does. I know, and he's becoming more and more confident. So that's great.
And he's usually right.
Yeah, he is.
Well, just with our current Supreme Court, it took them a long time on some healthcare issues, and it'll be interesting if they can get it done that quick.
Yeah,
Oh, that's true.
yeah. So anyway, when I get the link, I'll send it out to you, and it will be. It will be. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Do you need head counts?
For
Wednesday,
Wednesday and for
Thursday.
Thursday. You want those now, or anybody tell her now?
I'll be absent both times, Teresa.
No on Wednesday, yes on Thursday.
I can't be there at either.
Me either. Right now, I'm not
So
sure.
just me and Tim, so we'll represent well.
Okay.
Represent the board. Play some wiffle ball or something.
Now we'll just enjoy the bus ride in the heat, and hopefully it'll be cooler than 104 or 105.
Was it last year the bus broke down down there at, in that,
I
down at Otis
cannot on
Cox?
Wednesday. I'm hoping to on Thursday,
Okay.
but I can't guarantee.
I know for both, I'm afraid.
And I've got my ticket for Thursday already.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I've already sent my regrets. I got class.
Mr. President, I move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by getting up and leaving.